My son-in-law publicly branded me a useless grease monkey in front of his entire board of directors, while the room erupted in laughter and my daughter looked down at her shoes. I simply took a sip of my drink, smiled politely, and walked out the double doors. They had no idea that I had already crunched the numbers on his startup's quarterly filings. By the time I started my engine, I knew precisely how to pull the pin on the grenade he'd built out of deceit. But before I get to the end, you need to understand the beginning. I'm not a man who holds grudges easily. I spent 34 years teaching vocational skills, automotive repair and welding at a technical high school in South Boston. I taught young men and women the value of precision, how to diagnose an engine by sound alone, and how to build things that actually last. I never earned a fortune. A public educator's pension in Massachusetts isn't exactly a gold mine. But I helped thousands of kids build solid, honest lives. Many of them run the garages and construction crews that keep this city moving. That legacy was always plenty for me. My daughter Emily is my whole world. Her mother, my late wife Diane, passed away from an aneurysm when Emily was just 15. It was just the two of us in our triple-decker in Dorchester after that. Emily was sharp, valedictorian, full ride to BU, MBA from Kellogg. She landed a high-powered role at a consultancy firm in the Seaport District. She started seeing this guy, Caleb Vance, about 2 years ago. I met Caleb for the first time at a bistro in Back Bay. Emily had been talking him up for weeks. A visionary founder, CEO of a logistics startup, Wharton grad. The restaurant was the type where the appetizers cost more than a brake job. I wore my best blazer, a gray herringbone I'd had for a decade. Caleb arrived 25 minutes late. He offered no apology, just slid into the booth and immediately started scrolling through emails. He was 35, the same age as Emily, carrying that specific arrogance that comes from never hearing the word no. When he finally acknowledged me, his eyes did a quick audit, clothes, watch, rough hands. I saw his opinion form instantly. "Mr. Miller, great to meet you," he said, offering a handshake that felt like a wet fish. "Emily's told me all about you. High school teacher, right? Vocational instructor," I corrected gently. "Auto mechanics and structural welding." "Right." He nodded, already looking over my shoulder for the waiter. Blue-collar stuff. The dinner was a test of patience. Caleb monologued about his company, Apex Stream Dynamics, for nearly an hour. They were building some AI-driven supply chain protocol. He talked about angel investors, scaling strategies, and his 10-year roadmap to an IPO. Every few bites, he'd drop a remark about legacy thinking versus disruptive innovation. When Emily tried to ask about my semester, Caleb's phone pinged. He took the call right there at the table while I was explaining how a student had just restored a vintage Mustang. The check came to $300. I reached for my wallet, fully prepared to pay my third, but Caleb waved me down with a performance of charity. "Put it away, Art, I've got this. We know state pensions are, well, let's just call them quaint in this economy." Emily beamed at him like he was a saint. I drove home that night, gripping the wheel of my 2011 Ford Ranger until my knuckles turned white. It wasn't the cash that stung. It was the condescension, the effortless way he minimized 3 decades of service into the word quaint. Over the next 6 months, the pattern crystallized. Caleb visited our home once. Emily wanted to show him where she grew up. He walked through the living room, eyeing the mismatched armchairs and the oak coffee table I'd built by hand in the 90s. Rustic, he sneered, which definitely wasn't praise. His parents were worse. Preston and Lenore Vance lived in a sprawling estate in Lake Forest, Illinois, but kept a penthouse in Beacon Hill. Preston had made millions in hedge funds. Lenore sat on museum boards. They invited us for brunch in October. The dining room had a view of the Charles River that probably cost more than my house. Lenore served tiny portions of artisanal quiche on china so thin I was afraid to breathe on it. "So, Arthur," Preston said, pouring a vintage red, "Emily mentions you're in instruction?" "I teach at Southie Tech," I said. "Been there since '91, it's a public vocational school." Lenore's smile was tight. "How noble." "It must be challenging, working with that demographic." I knew the code. The kids who didn't go to prep school. The kids who built the penthouses Lenore lived in. "It's fulfilling," I said, keeping my voice steady. "My students become master mechanics, pipe fitters, iron workers, essential trades." "Naturally," Lenore said. though she looked at me like I'd just tracked mud onto the carpet. Although I imagine Emily wants a different trajectory for her own family, stability, access, the right circles. Emily stared at her napkin. Caleb patted her back. "Don't stress, Mom," he said. "I'll ensure Emily and our kids never have to worry about money. Not everyone can provide that level of freedom, but luckily I can." He looked directly at me when he said it. I finished my coffee in silence. 3 weeks later, Emily called me, breathless. Caleb had proposed. She was over the moon, talking about venues and floral arrangements. I told her I was thrilled and I meant it. She deserved the world, but a heavy feeling was taking root in my gut. The engagement party was held at Caleb's headquarters in the seaport, a converted industrial loft with exposed beams and designer lighting. Apex Stream Dynamics took up the whole top floor. Roughly 80 guests were there. Employees, venture capitalists, family friends. I wore my herringbone blazer again. The party was loud. Emily found me near the elevator looking stunning in a silk dress. "Dad, you made it." She hugged me, then pulled back, her expression anxious. "Hey, listen, Caleb is going to give a toast soon. He's stressed about the investors being here, so if anyone asks, maybe just keep the details of your job vague." "What are you saying?" "Just that Caleb worries some of the backers are snobs. They might not get that shop class is a career. Just say you're in educational administration." I looked at my daughter. "You want me to be ashamed of what I do?" "I'm asking you to help me tonight." She walked off before I could argue. I stood by the bar, nursing a soda, watching Caleb command the room. He was charismatic, I'll give him that, moving between clusters of people, laughing loudly, making everyone feel special except me. He'd given me a single nod when I entered and hadn't looked my way since. Around 8:30, Caleb stepped onto a riser. Someone handed him a mic. "Thanks for coming, everyone," he started. The room hushed. "Building a unicorn takes vision. It requires jumping off cliffs when others are looking for guardrails. It requires, and this is key, the guts to bet on yourself when the world says play it safe." He paused, scanning the crowd, his gaze flickering over me. "Growing up, I saw my father build an empire through risk. He taught me that comfort is the enemy of progress. While some folks are happy with a punch clock life and union breaks, innovators are building tomorrow." A few chuckles. Someone whispered, "Is he talking about the in-laws?" Lenore Vance, standing near a group of socialites, whispered loudly, "Well, we can't all be leaders. Some people need the safety of a state check." Emily's face flushed, but she stayed silent, standing next to Caleb's brother. Caleb went on, "I'm so glad Emily gets the difference between settling and conquering. She could have picked a simpler life, a smaller path, but she chose gold." He raised his glass. Applause thundered. I put my soda down and walked out. Nobody stopped me. I don't think anyone even saw me go. I drove home through the cold November rain, past the luxury high-rises, back to my triple-decker where the porch paint was peeling. Inside, I sat at my kitchen table, the same table, where I'd graded papers for decades, and felt a shift, not rage, analysis. I'd spent my life teaching kids how to diagnose catastrophic engine failure, how to find the hairline fracture in the axle. Caleb Vance was a machine with a bad rattle. I just had to find the loose bolt. I went to the basement, dug out a plastic bin, and brought it upstairs. Inside were binders from a chapter of my life I rarely discussed. Before I was a teacher, I spent 7 years as a quality assurance auditor for a major defense contractor. I knew how to read compliance reports, supply chain manifests, and financial disclosures. I'd helped uncover procurement fraud 3 times, contractors billing for parts that didn't exist. I opened my laptop. Apex Stream Dynamics had a news section on their site. I found articles about their Series B funding. $5 million raised. Valuation at $20 million. I spent 6 hours reading everything. Their product was an AI logistics coordinator that supposedly cut shipping times by 40%. It sounded brilliant, but the math in their press releases didn't add up. The next morning, I called an old friend. Saul Berkowitz had moved from engineering into forensic accounting for a firm that vetted tech startups. "Art Miller," he answered. "Been a decade. Everything okay?" "I'm good, Saul. Need a favor." "You know a company called Apex Stream Dynamics?" Silence. "Caleb Vance's shop?" "Yeah, they're the loud new kids on the block. Why?" "He's marrying Emily. I want to understand his stability." "Ah," Saul hesitated. "I can't share client data, but hypothetically." If I were auditing them, I'd be looking at their user acquisition costs versus their recognized revenue. The numbers on the street sound optimistic. Optimistic how? Like they're booking 10-year projections as cash in hand today. If the tech isn't real, the whole valuation is smoke. I thanked him. For the next 2 weeks, I became the world's leading expert on Apex Stream Dynamics. I pulled every public filing. I found their pitch deck on a startup forum. And then I found it. A footnote in their revenue recognition policy. They were recognizing letter of intent agreements as contracted revenue. If a client said we might spend $100,000 next year, Apex booked it as $100,000 earned today. It was aggressive accounting bordering on criminal fraud. I dug deeper. I found a Discord server for Boston developers where former Apex staff vented. Anonymous posts about forced overtime, instructions to fake demo data, and meetings where Caleb told them to simulate the AI results because the algorithm wasn't working yet. I documented it all. Then I called a former student, Marcus Thorne. He was a brilliant coder, now a senior engineer at Oracle. "Mr. Miller," he said, "what's happening?" "I need a technical consult, Marcus. What do you know about predictive logistics AI?" "It's mostly buzzwords," he laughed. "Why?" I explained the technical claims Apex was making. Marcus paused. "Wait, Apex?" My roommate interviewed there. He said their AI is just a team of interns in the Philippines manually entering data. "It's a mechanical Turk, Mr. Miller. It's fake." "Is that something the SEC would care about? If they raised $5 million claiming it's proprietary code? That's grand larceny." I added his testimony to my file. By December, I had a dossier 3 inches thick. Fake tech, inflated revenue, toxic workplace. It wasn't a smoking gun. It was a nuclear bomb. The wedding was set for February. Emily told me the venue, the Mandarin Oriental, had a strict guest limit. I had to cut my invite list to 2 people. I didn't argue. Just before Christmas, Apex held its annual Visionary Gala at the Convention Center. It was massive. Investors, press, industry titans.
Caleb invited Emily, and she asked me to come.
"He thinks it would be good for you to see the scale of what he does," she said. "Maybe you'll understand him better." I agreed. I bought a new suit, charcoal wool, impeccably tailored. I looked like a man who had spent a lifetime demanding excellence, which I was. The ballroom was bathed in purple light. Giant screens displayed Apex's growth. I arrived at 7. Emily looked frazzled. "Dad, please. Caleb is doing the keynote. Just smile." "I'm always smiling, honey." The presentation began at 8. Caleb strode out wearing a tuxedo that cost more than my car. Behind him, charts showed revenue skyrocketing. "Ladies and gentlemen," he boomed. 3 years ago, I had a dream. A world where logistics was seamless. I had a choice, the safe path. The mediocrity of a steady paycheck or the risk of greatness. He clicked a slide. I chose risk. Because that's what separates the lions from the sheep. Some people want summers off and a pension. He paused, locking eyes with me in the crowd. Emily saw it. Everyone saw it. Entrepreneurs build the future. The rest, they just take up space. Laughter rippled. Lenore leaned to a friend nearby. "He's so sharp. Some people just don't have the DNA for success. They need their little unions." "Is that the father?" the friend whispered. "The shop teacher?" "Yes, sweet, really. Like a relic." More laughter. Caleb continued. "We are projecting $12 million in Q1 revenue. Our tech is unrivaled. I knew for a fact their Q1 actuals were barely 200,000. After the speech, Caleb did a Q&A. He held a scotch, looking victorious. He spotted me standing near a pillar. "There he is," Caleb shouted, pointing. "My future father-in-law. A man who spent his life in a classroom, stable, safe. Look, there's honor in that. But it's not building, is it? It's just maintaining." The circle turned to stare. "I mean, look at the suit." Caleb grinned, emboldened by the scotch. "Off the rack, right, Art? That's the Safe Path uniform. When I met him, I thought, who still teaches shop? But hey, someone has to show the kids who can't hack college how to change a tire, right?" The laughter was loud now, cruel. Lenore clapped politely. Emily stood at the edge of the circle, face burning red. She looked at me, then turned her back. I set my glass down. I didn't make a scene. I walked past the fake charts, past the investors buying the lie, past my daughter who wouldn't look at me. In the parking garage, I sat in my Ranger. My hands weren't shaking. I felt cold, precise. I drove home, went to my study, and grabbed the folder. Every lie, every fake number, every witness statement. At 11 p.m., I composed an email. The recipients were the Securities and Exchange Commission and the Massachusetts Attorney General's Office of Financial Investigations. Subject, whistleblower. Complaint regarding material fraud and revenue fabrication at Apex Systems Corp. The aftermath wasn't immediate, but it was absolute. 3 weeks later, on a Tuesday morning, federal agents raided the Apex offices in the seaport. They seized servers, laptops, and financial records. It turned out the AI was indeed non-existent, and the revenue was 90% fabricated. The $20 million valuation evaporated overnight. The investors, including Caleb's parents, lost everything they'd poured into the round. Caleb is currently awaiting trial for wire fraud and securities fraud. He's looking at 8 to 10 years. Emily broke off the engagement the day he was arrested. She came over last night, cried for 2 hours, and apologized. I made her tea. I told her she was smart and she'd bounce back. She looked at me, eyes swollen. "How did you know, Dad? How did you know to look?" I smiled, leaning back in my chair. "I taught you, honey. Measure twice, cut once." Caleb never measured anything. He just kept cutting until the whole thing fell apart.